Coming up today, it's episode 97 of In the Front Row with Mike Vaccaro. We sit down with Joe Theismann. Joe grew up in New Jersey, eventually quarterbacked the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. He was drafted by the Dolphins, but instead went to the CFL and then eventually to the Washington Redskins, where he led the Redskins to the 1982 Super Bowl championship. His career ended on a Monday night gruesome injury that he'll share with us here today. Also, we talk about how that was a positive for him, and it led to his broadcasting career, some acting, and also speaking as well. All that, plus he tells us about why he wore the single bar face mask during his playing days. Great stuff ahead. The great Joe Theismann, our guest. Episode 97 of In the Front Row with Mike Vaccaro. And again, we certainly appreciate your time here today, Joe, and a lot to get to with your story. Such a great background. And first of all, I know you're coming off a hip replacement surgery. How you doing?
Doing great. Amazing. Just amazing. I was 4 weeks out. I was hitting golf balls. I could hit up to 7 irons. And in about 2 weeks, the doctor said I could go play. So it was a lot of discomfort for me over a relatively long period of time. And it was my leg I broke. So there were a lot of other little issues going on. But so far, so good. I'm excited about today. I'm going to go out and hit balls today.
There you go. We won't keep you too long so you can get out there and do that. But for you, you're a Jersey guy. It started in South River, New Jersey. Tell us a little bit about your upbringing and how that made you not just the athlete, but the person that you are today.
Well, I was fortunate. Mom and dad were, I lived in a two-parent home. My dad worked 13 hours a day, 6 days a week. He really only had Sunday off. My mom worked at Boy Scouts of America till 5 o'clock. And basically I was, to a large degree raised by my grandmother. But I lived 2 blocks from my high school, which I'm very proud of the fact that they named a street after me just in the last 6-7 months. So I'm honored. It's now Joe Theismann Way, Arlington Avenue. I could walk out of my front door, turn right 2 blocks. I'd have everything you could possibly imagine as a kid: football field, baseball diamonds, basketball courts, tennis courts. Everything was there for us to be able to play with. And, I grew up in a very small town, South River, about 1 square mile big. But all the towns were like, they fit like pieces of puzzles together. That's how close everything was. And, just started playing Pop Warner football at the age of 12. My mother wouldn't let me play when I was 10 and 11. Finally, a buddy of mine came to the house dressed in a uniform with his mother to convince my mother to allow me to play football. So I really started my career, I guess you could say, at the age of 12.
But as you were saying, you played all the sports. Basketball, baseball, along with football as well. When did football emerge as your go-to sport?
Because I played basketball, baseball, and football all through high school. And then when I got to college, I played a lot of basketball. We played a lot of basketball in college after, when I wasn't in football practice and that season was over, all my classes were done at 1 o'clock, and that's where I'd spend all my time. Most there and in the pool hall. Those were the 2 places I spent most of my time in college. And then I actually played baseball. I played 7 games at the University of Notre Dame, of which you cannot find a picture of me in a Notre Dame baseball uniform. But there are box scores that actually say that I played. We played in a tournament down in Florida. And then I stopped baseball to go to spring practice. So I guess you could say the commitment was made really my senior year in college to just go football all the way. I got drafted by the Twins my senior year as well, but I wanted to, football was where I wanted to go.
I know you went, obviously, as you mentioned, to Notre Dame, but you were looking south. You were looking, North Carolina, Duke, Wake Forest. Why was it Notre Dame over those other schools?
It's really funny, Mike. I signed at North Carolina State University. All the recruiting happened, a lot of different schools. And I went to Penn State. I basically, kids, just, narrow it down to what you think is a manageable number. Mine was 5. It was Wake, UNC, State, Penn State, Notre Dame. Never really had a chance to visit Notre Dame because I signed at North Carolina State. And then, a month or so went by. My high school coach, Ron Wojcicki, backed up Roman Gabriel at North Carolina State. And I thought, that's a good reason to go to college. So I signed. And so as it turns out, I wind up getting a call from Notre Dame, said, we'd like you to come out and visit the university. And I said, I already signed at NC State. Said, it doesn't matter. We're an independent school. Wouldn't affect you at all. At that time, you had to sit out a year if you changed conferences or other things. So I made a trip out to Notre Dame. A guy by the name of Rocky Blyer was my chaperone, as well as another gentleman by the name of Dan Harshman. And, what they did is Notre Dame recruited well-rounded athletes, I guess you could say. They didn't recruit specifically to a position as much. Like, for example, when I wound up signing to go there, I ultimately changed my mind and went to Notre Dame, obviously. But, that happened when I flew back to New Jersey. And my father said, "What do you think?" I said, "I have to go to Notre Dame." He said, "Why?" I said, "Because it feels right." And I contend this, Mike, that if we trusted our gut on a lot more decisions in our life, we probably would be right a higher percentage than not. So I trusted my gut, went to Notre Dame, and the rest is history. I started my career there as a punt returner. First 7 games of my sophomore year as a punt returner. Freshmen were ineligible. I was one of 13 quarterbacks that were signed at the university. And I was so skinny and small, they had nothing else to do with me but just let me play quarterback. They had guys they were 6'2", 210, good looking, throw the ball around. They became, some became linebackers, some became defensive backs, some became running backs. I mean, but for me, it was just, there was nothing to me. So I had to stay at the quarterback position.
It's 1968 to 1970, your sophomore year. An injury led to you becoming the starter, and it seemed like that was your door that you walked through. You never gave that up from that point on.
No, as a matter of fact, Terry Hanratty got hurt. Terry was a Heisman Trophy candidate. He and Jim Seymour were the pass catching throwing combination in college football at that time. And Coley O'Brien was on that team. Coley had led Notre Dame to a national championship just a year or two before. And we had another guy by the name of Bob Belton, who was the other senior, all 3 seniors, and me as a sophomore. And Terry gets hurt, and Eric comes to me in practice, and he said, "You're the quarterback." Well, you talk about decisive moments in your life. Here I am at the University of Notre Dame. And I really, I went there. I loved the school. I loved everything about it. I had to focus academically on it. That's why I chose it. And so I go to Notre Dame, and I wind up focusing on athletics and academics. And all of a sudden, I'm the starting quarterback at the University of Notre Dame, but I don't understand the impact of what it's like to be a quarterback at Notre Dame. It was great to be a student, but to be the quarterback of their football team was different. So I think my first game was against Pitt. And then after that, it was then became a game against Southern California. We tied them. And then from there on, we had a great junior year. The beginning of my senior year was, it was all the Heisman hype and the changing of the pronunciation of my last name and all the stuff that went with it. And, I was blessed that Ara believed in me. As a matter of fact, on his 90th birthday, we had a gathering out in South Bend. And so I knelt down in front of him. He was sitting in a chair. It was like a papal visit. Okay. So I kneeled down in front of him, and I said, "I got to ask you, I never asked you this. Why me? Why did you give me the chance to be the quarterback?" He said, "I felt you were ready." And so to this day, I'm forever indebted to Ara and, the foresight that he had to give me a chance to be able to do that, but also to let me return punts. People don't see, I went to the Pro Bowl. John Ralston was the coach at Stanford. And of course, he was coaching the Pro Bowl, the Hula Bowl team in 1970. Well, Jim Plunkett was there as well. Well, Plunk was really playing a lot of the quarterback. And so they said, "How many of you guys return punts?" Well, it's a sort of an all-star game, and we didn't have punt returners. So I said, "I return punts." So at the Hula Bowl, I wound up returning punts. And then so it's always sort of been that door to wherever I was going. It was that way for me in the Canadian Football League. In the Canadian Football League, they have what's called a rouge, or a single point. If the ball is punted into the end zone and it's not returned out, it becomes 1 point for the team that punted it in. My job was to, at the end of a half or end of a game, to catch the ball in the end zone and punt it back out. They had like a 5-yard, they called it a halo rule, that nobody could get within 5 yards of you. So you'd catch it and kick it out. So I really did that all through the career I had in different aspects of football. I wound up either punting or returning punts.
Yeah, versatility, something that, again, I've realized doing the research for this interview. Again, I don't think you're going to see many quarterbacks these days returning punts, whether it's
Doug
NFL or
Flutie,
college, right?
Mike, Doug Flutie tried it. Dougie's a good friend of mine.
There
He
you
did,
go.
I think, in a preseason game when he was in New England. And he said, "Man, you're crazy. You're just nuts." I loved it though. I really do. I would today, if somebody said, "If you could be healthy enough to go back and play one game, what would you want to do?" I said, "Let me be a punt returner."
Wow. Interesting. Not a quarterback, a punt returner.
I did that quarterback stuff. Let me be a punt returner.
Let's go back to what you said. Your senior year, leading into that, you were Joe Theesmann. As you mentioned, the PR director changed your name to try to hype up the Heisman. What went through that decision?
Well, Roger Valdiserri was our public relations director. He called me in the office beginning of my senior year. I had a really good junior year. Called me in my office. He said, "We think you have a chance at the Heisman." He said, "How do you pronounce your last name?" I said, "It's Theesmann." He said, "No, it's not. It's Theismann." I said, "No, it's not. My last name is Theesmann." He said, "No, Joe, your last name is pronounced Theismann." I said, "Give me the phone." So I called my dad back home in Jersey. I get my dad on the phone. I said, "Dad, I got a question for you." He said, "What's that, Joe?" I said, "Dad, how do you pronounce our last name?" It's like dead silence on the phone. My dad comes on. He says, "Son, are you all right? You're a senior in college. You don't know how to pronounce your last name. What's going on?" I said, "I'll explain later. I'll explain later." "How do you pronounce our last name?" He said, "Theesmann." I turned to Roger. I says, "Raj, my last name is Theesmann. I know. Just got off the phone with my dad." He said, "Joe, I want to tell you something. There's a trophy out there called the Heisman Trophy. It goes to the best college football player in the country. We think you have a chance to win that trophy. But we're not just going to count on your athletic ability nor the reputation of the University of Notre Dame, but we think by just simply changing the pronunciation of your last name from Theesmann to Theismann to rhyme with Heisman, we can get you that trophy." And it was really the first true campaign for someone to try and win a Heisman Trophy. Joey Harrington, I think, had one where they posted his picture and everything on a giant building after that. And there's been I think, others since, but I think that was the first real campaign to try and garner somebody an opportunity to win the Heisman Trophy.
Yeah, pre-social media times. I mean, that would have really
Oh,
blown
God, yeah.
up in social media days, right?
Yeah, they were sending pigeons. You send a pigeon out with some information if you needed to get somewhere.
Almost where Jim Plunkett, the Heisman Trophy winner that year. Archie Manning finished third, so in pretty good company, finishing second to Jim Plunkett. As you said, you were drafted by the Twins in baseball, but also by the Dolphins in football, and it didn't go well, the negotiations, I guess, because eventually you wound up with the Argonauts. Don Shula, not a big fan of Joe Theismann. Is that
That
correct?
is correct. Yeah, Don was not a big fan of me. I'd flown down I got drafted by the Dolphins in the fourth round, but actually their third pick because they had to give up their first round pick back to Baltimore because Don went to Miami. Don was a big Notre Dame guy too. So, I'd fly down to Miami. I negotiate with Mr. Robbie, the owner, because Joe Thomas, who was the GM, was having heart surgery. So, I wanted with Mr. Robbie. He asked me what I wanted. I told him, learned my first grade lesson in negotiations, never quote your price first. I did. And you'll love these numbers, Mike. 35, 45, and 55,000 and a $35,000 signing bonus. That was my 3 years.
Big money back then, right?
Huge. Hey, and that's what Mr. Robbie said. He said, that's usually money reserved for a second round pick. So, but he said, okay. And then we started haggling over the breakdown of the bonus and half it had to be repaid. And I just became disillusioned with the process. I did not have an agent. My first contract, I didn't have an agent. My last one, the first one didn't turn out so well from a relationship standpoint. My last one was just incredible with Mr. Cook. So I wind up, the Toronto Argonauts, I call them and they say, "Is my offer still on the table?" They said, "Yeah, fly up here to Toronto. But I'll tell you this, if you leave the country and you don't sign this contract, it's off the table." Sign the contract. Yeah. Flew back to South Bend. Eric calls me at 6 o'clock in the morning. He says, "What in heaven's name have you done?" I said, I signed with the Toronto Argonauts. He said, "I know. I just got off the phone with Shula and he's on his way up here on a plane." And Don came up and read me the riot act. "You had a moral obligation and this and this." I said, "Well, you guys screwed around with my contract." They ultimately gave me what I wanted, but I became totally disillusioned with the process. But, with every step in life, I think you have to learn something. And I learned that it's always good to have someone that is not emotionally involved to be able to present to you the circumstances and or consequences of what you might make a decision to do. But I flew by the seat of my pants alone, and so I have no regrets other than the fact that the Dolphins went to 3 consecutive Super Bowls, one of them happening to be an undefeated season. And this is, Mike, this is what I say to people who are Miami Dolphin fans. You ought to thank me because Bob Greasy in 1972 broke his leg. Earl Morrow quarterbacked 9 of those games. I couldn't have guaranteed that I won 9 games like Earl did. So to every Dolphin fan out there, I have one simple response, and it's, you're welcome.
Yeah, you would have been what, a second year player at that time, a little bit different, right? So
Absolutely.
yeah, so no undefeated season, but your 3 years with Toronto, what would you learn there? How did that make you a better quarterback and then ready to jump into the NFL from there?
Well, it gave me a chance to play football. It gave me a chance to make football decisions on the field, to deal with down and distances, to get beat up, to be able to make plays where you're required to make plays. You can sit and read a book on tennis and then think you're going to go play Djokovic or Rafael Nadal, and you think you're going to do well, but it doesn't work that way. It's the same thing about standing on the sidelines, watching a game as opposed to being out there and experiencing it. So what the Canadian Football League did for me, and I would have never left, except the numbers were just, they didn't believe in the big numbers, hardly big numbers, until after I left there. And so I wound up going there and I really got playing experience, I guess you could say.
Well, you left partly because George Allen, the head coach of the Redskins at the time, he wanted you, right? But
Yeah, he traded the number
to
one for
get
me.
you, he had to go through the Dolphins. They still had your rights. How did that transpire?
Yeah, George traded a number one for me. So I really became a number one pick in the NFL, sort of, the different way. But George traded for my rights, and Billy and Sonny were there, Billy Kilmer and Sonny Jurgensen. I came to town. First thing I said is I came here to play, not to sit, which really upset both of them. So they were mad at me for my entire career there with them. I was with Sonny for a year and Billy for about four. And then in 1978, Jack Pardee gave me the chance to be the starting quarterback.
Eventually, Joe Gibbs comes in.
There was another place I actually returned punts
Yeah.
first 2 years in Washington as well.
So while you were sitting, while you were waiting for your time as the quarterback, you just want to be involved somehow, right?
I did. I like I said, I did it. I did it in Pop Warner. I did it in high school. I did it in college. I didn't see any, and I used to, to occupy myself when practice was over. I would just simply go and catch balls from the jug machine. I'd catch them behind my back. I didn't wear gloves. Whether it was raining or not, I'd go out and practice in the rain. And I'm a big practice guy. I'm a big believer in trying to hone your skills no matter what they are. Mine at that time was as a punt returner. And I used to, when I wasn't returning practicing punts, I'd have some of the scout team guys stay out with me and I would throw the routes and go through the game plan. Just trying to get myself ready for the moment. That's the big thing, Mike, is when that moment presents itself in all of our lives, are you ready for it? Or what did you do to prepare for it? We get a lot of young guys come into our game, think they're really good until they step into this arena, which really is going to be interesting. It's like, Bo Nix is traveling out to Seattle. He has no idea what that's like. No idea to play in front of all those, the 12th man out there. I know Texas A&M thinks they have a 12th man. Seattle's got some loud 12 people too. And so it's going to be a different kind of an environment. I mean, everybody says, well, he's played 7 years of college ball. It ain't like the pros, I can tell you that. The speed's different, everything is different, and it's certainly not like preseason. These guys ran away from some players during preseason. All the young guys, Caleb, Jaden, Bo, Derek, Drake, all these guys, it's not that way at this level. Those defensive ends that are 270, they're faster than you. You learn that in a hurry. And when they hit you with a lot of impact, I guess you could say. So it's it's a different world. And I love everything about football. I study it. I study the teams. I look at the matchups. I had a chance to stay and be in Washington and spend some time with Jaden and some of the young guys. Sam was there. He got cut, Hartman. By the way, before we go any further, congratulations to the University of Notre Dame to win an unbelievably tough, hard-fought game at a very difficult place to play. So way to go, Irish.
Yeah, as you said, the 12th man, Texas A&M, it's not an easy place to go to, especially your very first game out of the gates. I mean, one of the really highlight games of this past weekend. So Irish off to a great start. I know, again, you're a very proud alum, and you're proud of Washington and what you did there. And again, fast forward to 1982, that season. It's a Super Bowl season, but it's also a strike season as well. How does it affect a team? How does it affect somebody like you and your preparation? Again, you want to be ready, but did that strike really alter your mindset and physically how you can be ready?
Well, Mike, it's opportunity is my favorite word. Why is my second favorite word, but opportunity is my first favorite word. This presented an opportunity for us to stay together as a group. I took the last game plan. I think we played 3 games and then we went on strike for 9. I organized practices. We went to a high school field, and for about 6 weeks of those 9 weeks, we had over 35 guys show up. We would go through the game plan. We'd go through practice exactly the way it was designed, exactly the way Coach Gibbs designed it. And we'd only had him for a year as our head coach. But I just decided that, I was going to try and organize it as well as I could. And we'd break the defense up and the offense, and then we go 7-on-7. We never went live, but we stayed in tune with one another. We'd go to each other's houses. We'd hang out together. And I really think that period of time there built a cohesiveness for us that carried us once the season started again. We wound up going 12-1. And it was like, I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that the guys committed themselves to show up at these practices to try and keep our edge a little bit when everybody else sort of went their own way. Not us. We just sort of hung together. The last 3 weeks or so, it became more sparse. But when we were ready to go, we really hit the road. We hit the road running.
And that was all you. You organized all that because
I wasn't all me. I was sort of the guy that sort of put it together a little bit, but it was we had a lot of great leaders on that football team. It isn't one person that leads an organization. You have to find the right people that are willing to take the responsibility to lead. Leadership is one of those things that they do all books and theories. And in my speeches, I talk about leadership. The most important thing for people to understand about leadership, it's not about you. It's about the people you lead. That's what made Tom Brady so great. That's what made Peyton Manning so great. Both of them left their teams they were entrenched in those teams, went someplace else, and then that next year held people accountable and won championships. That's special.
Well, again, you had a special group. You had great nicknames as well. The Hogs, your offensive linemen, the Smurfs were your wide receivers. Obviously, you win the Super Bowl, but was that just a fun team to be a part of?
I called it a group of characters with character. I mean, really, we were. I mean, if you went looking for us, you'd find them all over the place. I describe it this way. If you lined our team up on the side of a road and there was this like white line you're supposed to cross in as a safety feature to get to the other side, that didn't happen with this group. We'd have guys, climbing high. We'd go over high tension wires. They'd wait till traffic came to try and dodge them. I mean, it was just a group of characters with character. And the biggest character was John Riggins. John was the character of characters. And it was fun. Joe made it fun too. I mean, it was fun to practice. He'd come up with these different plays for us on a Wednesday when you couldn't wait to Sunday. I couldn't wait to Sunday to see if he'd called it and what the results were going to be. So it became a very cohesive time for our football team to go forward. 83 were, one of the best teams in the history of football. 84, we're back to the playoffs. 85, I get hurt. And, then you go on in 87 and you win another championship. You go on in 91 and win another championship. But that speaks volumes to Coach Gibbs.
Well, again, Super Bowl 17, and you beat the Dolphins, but before that, you beat the Cowboys to get to the Super Bowl. So, number one, the Cowboys, big rival, and then the Dolphins, a team that drafted you with Don Shula. I mean, this had to be icing on the cake for you as, not just winning a Super Bowl, but the path you took to it.
I'm not a vindictive person, Mike, but it was the situation with the Cowboys was absolutely unbelievable. Obviously, at that time, it was the Giants were a dominant team. The Cowboys were a dominant. The Eagles were a heck of that whole division. Yeah. We had a bunch of people that could win a lot of football games. And it always seemed to boil down to us and the Cowboys. And, to play somebody a third time in a year is unusual. So we wind up beating the Cowboys at RFK Stadium. But I've had people come up to me and say, what's the most memorable game you ever played in? The most memorable game I ever played in, obviously, you expect me to say the Super Bowl, which it certainly was. But the game that I remember that stands out is that NFC Championship game against the Cowboys, when I stood on the sidelines and these people pounded their feet on the seats. They were aluminum seats. the ground beneath my feet actually shook. I sort of get goosebumps telling that story. It was so unreal to be standing there and feel that ground just shaking under your feet. And, we want Dallas, we want Dallas. They were chanting like crazy. And then it was an opportunity for us to go to the Super Bowl. And of course, you bring up my relationship with Miami. Well, first of all, I don't go to Miami. Then we wind up beating Miami in the Super Bowl. Now, a lot of people don't realize this, but I broadcast Super Bowl 19 with Don Meredith and Frank Gifford. Miami plays San Francisco in Palo Alto, California. Shula sees me for the third time. They lose that game. So I'm like the last person in the world I think Shula ever wants to see again. But as time went on, we were cordial. Let's put it that way.
There you go. Again, you from the Redskins, but again, the ties to the Dolphins is incredible. Well, you talk about memorable games. Obviously, games you want to forget is November 18th, 1985, Monday Night Football. I'm sure you're sick about talking about it, but what do you remember the most of that injury in that moment?
Actually, I'm not sick of talking about it because it was a life-changing experience for me. I had a tremendous amount of success in high school and college and in pro football up to that point. World champion, MVP, all the things that go along with it. 1984, fourth highest paid player in the National Football League at $1 million a year, which now is less than a game check for these guys. But hey, things are what they are. But I had sort of become full of myself. I thought the world revolved around me. I thought I was the reason why we were successful. And I remember having a conversation with Mike Tyson not too long ago. And Mike said something that I always remember, a very profound statement. He said, if you don't find humility, life will find it for you. And for me, all of a sudden, I thought I had the world by the tail. I was the starting quarterback in Washington. I was, a high paid individual. I had all these things going on. And all of a sudden, it was gone. Everything that I held dear, all material things that I thought were important were basically gone. And it slammed my feet down to the ground. And I had to take a real hard look at who I was as a person. Did I want to continue on this path of thinking I was really something special? Or was it time to find humility and understand that there are much more important things in this life than just me? And so that's why the night it ended a career, but it also began a life, I guess you could say. And that's why I look back on it, and I look back on that experience, and I don't know where I would have gone. People say, well, what happens if you would have kept on playing? I don't know. Nobody knows. I'm not a what if guy. And I'm not a matter of fact, I'm a windshield guy, not a rear view mirror guy. I can't change what happened back there, but I can sure affect what happens out here.
Tremendous perspective with that. And do you look at it as irony in 2016, Alex Smith, very similar injury in the same date, November 18th, 2016, and playing for the Redskins as well?
33 years later.
It's crazy.
The same exact spot on the field. I have a nephew by the name of Alex Smith, who was 33 years old at that time. His left tackle was out. My left tackle was out. Both of us were taken out by defensive players of the year. He, J.J. Watt, me by Lawrence. The synergy is scary with the whole thing. And I was in the stands that night. As a matter of fact, I've only seen my injury once in 40 years. Wow. I'm sitting there and they show an angle from the end zone. They show Alex lying down and I could sort of see his leg bent. And I turned to my wife, Robin, and I said, it's just like mine. And, I turned away from the TV, and that's the last time I wanted to see it. But I spent a lot of time with Alex through his rehabilitation. And anybody that hasn't seen the ESPN special Project 11, I will remind anybody it is gruesome. But yet it's the story. It's not the story of a football player coming back to play football. It's the story of a man who refused to let people tell him he could not do something. I think it's a great lesson for all of us in our lives that don't let other people tell you who you are, or what you need to be, or the way you need to live your life. Respect everybody and just thank them for their opinion, but you don't have to listen to them.
It's crazy. The bond that you two have for a crazy reason and an unfortunate reason for both of you guys. But again, great perspective from you. As you said, it unfortunately ended your playing career, but it jumpstarted your broadcasting career.
Yeah.
Was that an easy transition for you?
I had shows in Washington. So I did Good Morning Washington, and I did a segment on the news. And, when you're a starting quarterback in a national football league, you wind up in front of a camera a lot. I was very blessed to, have a long run to be able to do that and do shows, do different kinds of shows. And so I always wanted to stay around the game of football. So the transition going in was easy for me, but I had to learn to speak in sound bites. You just can't ramble on, like, you and I are having a conversation. We can tell every story we want, and we can go beginning to end. But if you're broadcasting a game, you get a very short window to be able to present something. Like, for example, if you're the play-by-play guy, which you'll do, like Mike Patrick did for me, and Paul McGuire, the three of us, Mikey would set up and say, okay, it's 3rd down and 7. They're on the 20-yard line. This is where I get to chime in and say, it's where they've run, this quick slant a couple times before. That's all you need to say. In the beginning, I would go, well, it's a great opportunity for them to run the quick slant because it looks like the corner is going to be sitting on the outside and that safety is not, you don't need to get into all that. I call it the what and why. Television, from a broadcasting standpoint, as an analyst, is the what and why scenario. The what is what people see with their eyes. The why is my job to tell them why it happened. So I call it a what and why business.
There you go. You'd be a great partner. As you said, you partner with Mike Patrick, a great play-by-play guy for so many years with ESPN. Also, one of your duties.
Paul was unbelievable.
Yeah, that was one of
such a special guy.
You guys were really one of the biggest, I guess, pairings at that time, right? The three of you guys.
Yeah. I think we were considered pretty darn good.
Also at that time, a little stint with the American Gladiators. We had Dan Nitro Clark on not too long ago. How did that come about?
Again, with the success you have in football, it carries over into other businesses. And, they were putting together the American Gladiators, and they called me and said, would you want to be a host? So Mike Adamle and I were the hosts of the original American Gladiators. What you see today is the Ninja Warrior competition. That, we were the grandparents of that whole thing when it came to the American Gladiators. And we had all kinds of people they were great athletes. And I remember our first set, we had like a jousting bar. And there was a nail the way they anchored these things with these giant spikes. And I'm walking around going, gee, you hope nobody falls on this. They're going to get impaled. We didn't have the protocol, I guess, they have today when it comes to that. But it was fun. There was the obstacle course, where you'd shoot tennis balls at one another, and then there was the tackling part of it. Every now and then I'll watch it and I get a kick out of it and know that, I had the opportunity to be a part of something, the first things that were put out there. So it was fun.
Well, we've also had Larry Zonka, who I know kind of did a little bit of that as well. So we have the American Gladiators covered on this show here. We also have some acting covered as well, because you've done some acting as well as broadcasting, and one that sticks out to me is Cannonball Run 2.
Yep.
What do you remember about that? Because the cast at that time was incredible.
Incredible. I've done a couple of Hallmark movies since that. Snow Coming is one, and I did Snow Coming is the one, and then I did one before that as well. But Cannonball Run 2 is, what an ensemble. Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., Charles Nelson Riley, Burt Reynolds, Dom DeLuise, Shirley MacLaine, Catherine Bach, Susan Anton, Jackie Chan, Richard Keel, who played Jaws. There were so many different characters there, and Burt was a dear, dear friend of mine, and he just gave me a chance to be in the movie. Terry Bradshaw did Cannonball originally, and then I wound up doing Cannonball too.
Yeah, those are some of the biggest stars back in the early 80s with Cannonball Run 2. We can tell, obviously, speaking is a big part of what you do. How much are you out there doing some speaking engagements, talking to maybe businesses and other groups?
I do about 70 a year. I get invited to talk to people. I wrote a book called How to Be a Champion Every Day. It's available on Amazon and I guess other places. But the book is based upon principles that I believe. I believe the world of sports, the world of business, and our own lives all parallel one another. And that was the theory behind the book. It took me about 5 years to write it. It's not a long book. It's only 162 pages. And, one of the things that the end part of the book has something I'm very proud of. It's called A Letter to My Younger Self. And I ask people this question is, why don't you sit down, take a minute, and if you could write a letter to your younger self, what would you tell younger you? I mean, it's a great exercise. And, I dedicate it to the men and women who protect our country. I'm a big military guy. And we just, I tell people all the time, when you see somebody in uniform, police officer, fireman, up our military, first response, just say thank you. Just walk up and say thank you, because they don't hear it near enough. So many people are under fire from so many different aspects of life. Just, man, a simple thank you. They really appreciate it.
You can find that book. You can find some other things on joetheismann.com. And one of the things you can find there, you're the 1982 NFL Man of the Year because of what you give back and what you do in the communities. You can get autographs, things autographed, but you got to pay for it, but it goes to a very good cause. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I started this, oh gosh, I don't even know how many years ago. I wish I did it when I played. On the website, I list different items, trading cards, helmets, pennants, pictures, whatever. I simply ask for a donation to St. Jude's Children's Research Center. All the money goes to them. I don't want any. I don't want any of it. I send it all to them. And then at the end of the year, whatever donations have come in, I match. So I could send that to the hospital. Mike, we're not put, it took me a while to figure this out, but we're not put on this earth to be served. We're here to serve others. And you get to do it in so many different ways as individuals. The opportunity to be able to serve people in so many different ways. And it isn't just economically, it's with your presence, it's with your thought, it's with your words. And so for me, St. Jude is very, very close. My daughter was at the Children's Hospital National Medical Center in Washington, D.C. She had a heart surgery when she was a baby, and it opened my eyes to just how important it is. And now we're fighting the battle to try and cure cancer in children and in adults as well. And, anything we can do to fund that research takes us one step closer.
Giving back and having that perspective, would that be one of your messages to your younger self?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It ain't about you, Joe. I mean, that would be, and that's the way I would put it in the note, in the letter. It ain't about you. It's about other people.
Your thoughts on the Commanders right now? We're not really a hot take show, but I know there's been some good changes. Dan Quinn taking over, and he's tried to, bring you guys back. Darrell Green getting his jersey retired this year. Are you seeing things change for the better for that franchise?
I think there's an energy and an excitement, especially with the drafting of Jaden. We've had a lot of quarterbacks. Matter of fact, Mike, since I got hurt in '85, I believe there's been 43 different starting quarterbacks in Washington, D.C. Wow. I mean, it's just every year it's somebody new. If you looked up the list, if you pulled up the list of starting quarterbacks in Washington, D.C. since 1985, I don't even know if you'd recognize so many names. There's recycled guys that are at the end of their career. But now Jaden, I think, has a chance to be that one guy that'll continue to be the quarterback over an extended period of time. He just has to stay healthy. I mean, that's the one thing I just tried to stress to him when I had a chance to talk to him is protect yourself. The most important thing you can do for this football team is to keep yourself healthy enough to practice and play. That way you're going to get better. Look at Anthony Richardson. He's really in Indianapolis. He's really in his rookie season.
Yeah.
Got hurt, first, second game, and all of a sudden he's gone. And now you're rehabbing. If you can stay healthy, it makes a difference. I'm very proud of the fact that I played in 163 consecutive games. And to me, showing up for work is important. But in our business, especially because that's the way you learn.
And you played a lot of those games with a single bar face mask. What were you thinking back at those times? Were you ever worried?
Well, there's two reasons, okay? A lot of people don't realize this. First of all, Billy Kilmer and Sonny Jurgensen both wore single bars. Mm-hmm. What would I have looked like if I had a double bar? Okay, if I had the two of them across my nose, part of it was, I guess you could call peer pressure. And the other one was when I handed off, the double bars just bothered me. I was very finicky. I never wore a wristband on my right wrist. I only wore an elbow pad on my left. I was very superstitious when it came to playing the game, the way I got dressed, the way I went to the stadium. I'll tell you a funny story. Dave Butts, we just lost Dave a few years back, used to drive a van Dave Butts, Mark Mosley, and I all drove to the stadium together down the GW. Anybody that knows the GW Parkway in Washington, D.C. knows how crazy it is. So we wind up driving and we drive down, and all of a sudden I'd lay in the back and have my game plan and People magazine and going through it, and we'd hit a bump and Dave would go, yeah. I go, what the heck's going on? And he drove over roadkill. He would hunt, the car would swerve, try to hit roadkill. The size of the roadkill in David's mind would determine how well he would play. That's how nutsy we were as football players. Really, just nutsy guys. But yeah, it was like I said, characters with character.
Yes. I was going to say, go back to that. It certainly fits. College Football Hall of Fame inducted in 2003. Other honors as well. I'm sure, as you're progressing here, you look back and think very fondly of your career and some of the things that you've been able to accomplish during your career.
Well, it isn't the awards. It's the people that you meet along the way, the people that have taught you so much, the people that give you the chance to be where you are. I certainly wouldn't have had a chance to be a part of a Super Bowl team had it not been for incredible guys. People don't realize Super Bowl XVII, David Woodley, the Miami quarterback, was 0 for 17. He didn't complete a pass. And it was a hard fought game, an incredible football team Miami was. And we were going in 83, we were an unstoppable machine because of Coach Gibbs and the men that I had a chance to be coached by, the players I had a chance to play with. The awards are just a result of them, not me. I happen to be the guy, with the ball, and they're the ones that gets all the attention. But I'm very honored by every award that someone has, bestowed upon me and honoring me in such a way. But I don't look at it as honoring me. I look at it as honoring my family. I look at it as honoring the men that I had a chance to play with and those that had a chance to coach me. To me, it's nice to be recognized. And I say this to everybody. It's nice to be important, but it's a lot more important to be nice.
Well, you certainly are important. We appreciate your time here today. How can people follow you? I know you're on social media a little bit. We mentioned the website, joetheismann.com, but social media platforms, are you active on there?
I'm on X, and it's at Theismann7.
Yeah, and you'll be tweeting about Notre Dame throughout the season, I would suspect.
Yes, I will. I just, and I'll be tweeting about the Commanders as well. I really enjoy the engagement with the fans. It's obviously a lot of people look at different types of social media as a way where they don't have to put their face out there, or they can say things whatever they want. And it's like I just appreciate the fans caring. I appreciate the things that they say. If I'm going somewhere or doing something, I really appreciate that. So to me, it's a chance to be able to stay connected to the wonderful people that have supported me over the years.
Well, Joe, we appreciate your time, and this has certainly been a treat to hear your story firsthand and so many twists and turns, but obviously a tremendous career, and what you're doing now and what you're doing to help out and give back is amazing as well. Can't thank you enough for your time here today.
Oh, Mike, thank you. Life's an adventure. Just what you make of it that makes a difference. Thanks so much.
Well, a big thank you to Joe for carving out a little bit of his time to sit down with us here today. And also a big thank you to Vice President of Communications for the Washington Commanders, Sean DeBarbieri, for helping arrange our interview. As always, we thank you for watching and for listening, and invite you to like, to subscribe, and to share our episodes. We continue to get closer to our 100th episode. Great guests still to come. For JR Equipment, our creator, producer, and director behind the scenes, I'm Mike Vaccaro. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. Another edition of In the Front Row with Mike Vaccaro. Have a great day, everybody.